We come to practice, we practice hard. We tell you we be honest, and we gonna make games, bro. All right, welcome everybody to another Tuesday Commander Film Room Breakdown. George Carmy, Mark Bullock, here to help us with all the All-22 stuff. Today, week 3 is Bobby Slowik. Interesting guy. He's got the he runs his chain back to 2012. He's one of these guys everybody's looking at. He spent time with Shanahan in a couple of different places. Let's see, 2019 to 2020, he was the offensive assistant for the 49ers. 2021, the offensive pass game specialist, offensive pass game coordinator last year, and then, of course, the offensive coordinator for the Texans this year. They're doing great things down there. And, of course, C.J. Stroud's been incredible. Mark, let's take a look at the film and see what it is that everybody's so excited about Bobby Slowik. Also, real quick before we do that, Mark, I've seen these things going around, and George, you may be able to comment on this, but
sure.
This notion that Bobby Slowik is maybe 1 year away, I think we've seen that a bunch here in Washington, where it's like they've said that about a number of people we've watched leave and have success. If you think he's the guy, you just go get him, right?
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, well, I would think so. This is a long-term project. It's not necessarily something that they're looking to be winning the Super Bowl next year. So if you think he's the guy that can develop into the guy, then there's rather like the quarterback. If you think the quarterback can be the quarterback, you take him number 1 overall or number 2 overall, and then you don't necessarily put pressure on him to win 12 games next year. You develop him, and you pair him with the head coach, and the head coach is in the same boat in my eyes. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be that Bobby Slowik's a year away. You could go for him now and let him learn on the job, and probably you pair him with someone experienced and have him learn from those guys while doing the job. So yeah, I don't think. I think if you think he's good enough, if you think he can lead, and you think he can build a good staff, then I don't think you're worried too much about the experience.
Much like Callahan just got hired by the Titans, right? I think people thought maybe he was a year away. They didn't want to lose him a year from now. So you get him now, and I think that's how we've seen these kind of things evolve over the years, right, George?
Yeah, now I kind of like what Mark said as well. I was listening to Grant and Danny while I was driving around work today. They brought up a great point about Jim Harbaugh. They basically were like, Jim Harbaugh would be a horrible fit here in D.C. because Jim Harbaugh is known for his staunch leadership. He's a great leader. He's a great inspirer. But after a couple of years, his shtick kind of runs pretty hot and cold. People get really upset with him. It kind of burns bridges where he's at, right? That isn't necessarily what Washington's trying to do. Washington's trying to sustain long-term success, and something that's something that continues for a couple of years, as Mark alluded to. So kind of having that extra leash, I think Slowik can grow into his role, and if you can project him being good, I don't see a problem with it either. So I kind of like a long-term goal with him.
All right, Mark, let's take a look at what's got everybody so excited.
Yeah, so we've got the big thing everyone talks about with Bobby Slowik is that he comes from the Kyle Shanahan tree, and then you definitely see a lot of those similarities in the Shanahan offense. And so the first thing I thought I'd do is I'd show a couple of clips from what Kyle Shanahan does, and the kind of the way he sequences his play calling, the way he builds his concepts one after another, a play after another, so this is just a little quick package, and everything with Kyle Shanahan starts with this wide zone, outside zone scheme. So you'll see here they're lined up. They've got 12 personnel. They've got 2 tight ends on the field, and they're just going to run this outside zone. This is against Washington back in 2022, but it still remains the base of their offense now. They have a little reverse pivot out from Brock Purdy. McCaffrey catches it. He's running this wide zone. The whole offensive line's getting the defense to go that way. And then they create this little cutback seam, and they pick up a solid gain. So that is the basis of their offense.
Quickly, Mark, for those that haven't been following along, when we talk about 12 personnel, the first number is for the running back, second number is for the tight end. And so if you hear the 21 or the 12 or the 13, that I think just in case some people won't know that.
Sure.
So I just thought that
yeah. So the first number would be the running back. So in this case, it's 12 personnel. So it'd be one running back, two tight ends, and then the receivers. You just make up from the rest of the five eligibles. So then you see this is the outside zone scheme, and then that is the basis of the offense. This is the same game. This is later on the same game. You have the exact same look, 12 personnel, two tight ends to this right-hand side. It looks like it's going to be that same wide zone scheme to that right side. Brock Purdy initially takes that little reverse pivot out that we saw before. So everything looks like, at this point, everything looks like it's going to be that outside zone. But what they actually have is they have a little RPO built into this where if this corner is playing off, they have this receiver on what's called a now slant, where rather than working up a few yards and then breaking inside, he's just going to break inside immediately. And Brock Purdy's going to come out of this little pivot, quickly get rid of this throw, and do a nice job and pick up a nice solid gain. So that's one little variation off of the wide zone scheme. And then obviously the famous Shanahan stuff is you do the bootlegs and the play actions off of the wide zone. So here we've got, again, that exact same look, 12 personnel, two tight ends to this right side. You've got the receivers in tight split. It looks exactly like what we just saw with the previous two plays. But what they're actually going to do is fake this wide zone run. Purdy's going to roll out, and you're going to have George Kittle coming across the field on a little shallow cross. So again, we'll see that same little reverse pivot out. And again, at this point, when he's looking like he's going to toss the ball, it looks exactly the same as that same run that we just saw a minute ago and that same now slant that we just saw a minute ago. You get everyone biting real hard on this run. All the actions coming this way. But you get George Kittle leaking out. You get Brock Purdy spinning out on the bootleg. You got nobody over on this side of the field. And Brock Purdy's easily just going to chuck that to Kittle, and Kittle's going to work his way back across the field and into the end zone. So that is the basics of the Shanahan system. They build off that wide zone scheme. They make everything look the same. And it's really hard to defend because you never know exactly what's coming at you. Bobby Slowik has all the same ingredients. So here's the Texans from earlier this year against the Bengals. This is a wide zone scheme. And we see them running this little wide zone scheme. There's not the reverse pivot out. It's just a straight handoff, but you see they've got all the offensive linemen working this way. You got a nice little double team with one guy working up to the linebacker, a second little double team with a guy working up to the linebacker. And you're going to create this nice cutback lane for the running back, and you're going to get a nice solid gain there. And then off of that, you've got that same now slant option, this is another game, so it's not set up the exact same way that we saw Kyle Shanahan all in one game in a couple of series, but it's still the same ingredient. So again, you're going to fake this wide zone here, and you're going to hit this now slant. And the nice part about this is they're running this in the red zone, so you've got everyone over here looking to try to fill this run, and that essentially leaves this corner one-on-one with this receiver on that little now slant. That receiver's going to take it and go score a touchdown.
Easy money, Mark.
Easy money.
I guess the one thing about that is it just seems like a pretty QB-friendly kind of off, at least for those first initial plays. Seems like pretty, it's multiple. You can potentially audible into a different play. It's deceptive for the defense. And at the same time, there's a couple easy hot routes to get rid of the ball quick, and it works pretty well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you're going to see from this offense is it's extremely QB-friendly, and that's why everyone's trying to run a version of the Shanahan system, and that's why that tree is spread so well. And so this is that third layer that we talked about where you have a bootleg and they add a little bit more onto this. They have a little jet sweep and they have a little fake block that turns into the flat route. But again, it's just a bootleg fake off of the wide zone action. Quarterback rolls out and he's got a tight end wide open in the flat for a nice gain. And it's picking up little chunks like that, nice and easy. So the foundation of the Shanahan system is there for Bobby Slowik. But what I would say is that he doesn't rely purely on what Shanahan used to do or still does. He can match his system to his personnel. Now, obviously, in San Francisco, Kyle Shanahan has built the thing from the ground up there. So he's built an offensive line which is all about running his own stuff. And they've adjusted in the last few years. They've started to implement more gap stuff, and that has helped for them. But they're still, their foundation is the zone stuff. In Houston with the Texans, Bobby Slowik still, as we've seen, has the wide zone stuff built into it. But they've had a lot of injuries on their offensive line, and some of their core players on their offensive line are more suited to gap scheme stuff. So Bobby Slowik has been versatile enough to tailor the system to the gap scheme stuff and mix that stuff in. So here we've got what's just a duo concept, which is a very well-known gap scheme concept. You've got essentially trying to get two double teams on the two defensive tackles. So you've got the left tackle and the left guard working on this defensive tackle, and they're going to try to drive him back and then pick up this linebacker. You've got the same situation over here with the center and the right guard working on this defensive tackle, trying to drive him back and work to this weak side linebacker. And then the added thing they have here is they bring a receiver, Robert Woods. They bring him in and insert him into the blocking scheme to pick up the strong safety. You might think, why are you bringing extra receivers into the box, which brings extra defenders into the box? The idea here is that you get this receiver blocking this safety, and that's forcing this corner to now come in and replace what that safety was doing. And as you'll see, that kind of works out for them here. So they run this little duo scheme nicely. You get your double teams up front here. You get Woods inserting to pick up the safety. These linebackers are all thinking, because they've seen a lot of zone stuff, they're naturally thinking, okay, we got to fill this way. But actually, that's exactly where they want this to go. That makes it nice and easy for these double teams to kind of peel off and pick up those linebackers. You see those linebackers get picked up nice and easy. And now you have basically the running back has a choice. He can either go one-on-one against the corner that has to try to replace because the receiver was blocking the safety, or he can take this lane between the receiver and the left tackle. And he goes outside, he gets the corner to commit outside, and then he bursts up there and out into the open field. So that's a nice little duo scheme run. We've broken down a couple of these over the last few weeks. But
real quick, Mark, I want to ask a question too. But go ahead, Doug, you go first if you want.
Well, I was just thinking when I was watching the San Francisco game, I remember the announcer saying something to the effect of they have run more empty and shotgun with Brock Purdy because Kyle felt comfortable with him there. I was just wondering, as you've been watching kind of the tape here with Slowik and Stroud, I would assume that Stroud spent 95% of his time in shotgun at LSU. How much do they have him under center, and has he felt comfortable that way? Because I would assume that's the Slowik and quarterback coach. They've kind of made him that way if they're running a lot from under center.
Yeah, well, he did some of that in college. He wasn't completely in the gun in college, and he has the footwork for it. But the benefit of putting him under center is the play action stuff, which we will get onto. That is a huge part of what this offense is, and it's a huge part of what has made Stroud such a successful quarterback as a rookie, is what they've been able to do with the play action game off of this run stuff. So that's why they've put him under center more often than necessarily what he would have done in college. But it's to help with the play action. And actually, he's done quite a nice job, Bobby Slowik, of mixing in some pistol stuff to give Stroud that feel of being in the shotgun, but also still having the effect of being under center for the running back and being able to turn your back to the defense to help disguise the run fake. So yeah, it's something that I expect if Slowik doesn't get a head coaching job and stays in Houston for another year or two, they will develop into more shotgun drop back passing, because Stroud is certainly capable of doing that. But as he's a rookie quarterback, the easiest path to success is being able to build a strong play action attack off of a run game, and then so that's what the Kyle Shanahan offense is typically all about, and then that's what Slowik has been about this year.
It's funny, Doug. I had the exact same question. Like, we've been seeing that going across the internet the past couple of days. Like, I believe Greg Olson tweeted something out about the highest success rate is play action on first downs under center. And we're starting to see that a lot with, at least coincidentally, it's been under center for all these video clips so far. And then, we also see that, these rookie quarterbacks, I think JJ McCarthy is the only rookie quarterback with the projected top 6 that has been under center more than 20 times, which is pretty interesting. But, hopefully that's kind of as a growth and you get the quarterback on this, this system seems pretty QB friendly, so hopefully they can evolve over time. So just going to put it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we go back to the clips, so we just saw a duo run scheme. This is just another example of a gap scheme. This one is counter. So you've got the left guard pulling to kick out the edge defender. The tight end, this is actually fullback, but he's kind of lined up like a tight end, comes across and follows around and wraps around for the linebacker. And then you have the running back take a false step here and then getting up the field. And it's a nicely blocked gap scheme. You have these guys all blocking down. You have the guard coming over to kick out this defensive end. Fullback comes in, wraps around for the linebacker, and then you get this nice crease for the running back to run through and into the secondary. So that's something that the Texans, Bobby Slowik over the year has discovered, that his offensive line is better at running the gap scheme stuff. And generally speaking, like, they do still use a lot of zone. But they involve a lot of gap scheme stuff because the personnel suits the gap scheme stuff. And so if you're going to use a lot of gap scheme runs, your play actions have to marry that. You can't, if you're going to use a bunch of counter runs and then your play action game is all based off of the zone scheme, it's not going to marry up nicely. The defenses are going to catch on and the fakes aren't going to be as effective. But if you're using your gap scheme runs and you start using gap scheme fakes on your play action passes, which is what we're going to see here, you'll see how effective it can be. And Bobby Slowik is, what I've really enjoyed is just how detailed he is with his play action passes and marrying up the concepts to his run game. So we're going to see the fake of that same counter scheme we just saw with the left guard is going to pull out across to the right hand side to fake that counter scheme, and he's going to block whatever edge defenders on this side. And they're gonna run what in the Shanahan system is known as drift. It's the thing that we've seen the RG3 made all of his money on in 2012, throwing this route to Pierre Garçon, where
I remember it.
Yeah, the receiver gets up the field 5 or 6 paces, kind of drifts inside over the middle, just trying to find space. And on this backside, they've got a deep comeback route just as a backup option. And so they're going to fake this play action, and the idea here is to try to hit this drift route. And so they'll fake the play action, they'll try to hit the drift route, and I think Stroud probably could have hit it, but he just hesitates for a moment. But the nice thing, the two of the main details of this play design, the first is about the fake, but we'll come to that in a minute. The other one here is the timing of these routes. So this deep comeback route is deliberately run deeper to give Stroud, if this route isn't open, this drift route, this primary route isn't open, Stroud then has time to reset his feet and come back across the field and get in sync with this receiver when he runs his deep comeback route. So you can see Stroud has now reset his feet. He can hit this comeback route, and they pick up a nice gain. So, but the first point I did want to make was the detail of the play action fake. So you could just fake pulling a guard one way or the other, and that's going to give a run key to the defense to make them bite up. But the real impressive thing here is that he's thought ahead of thinking, where I want to throw this ball is in this seam here to that drift route. So I want these linebackers not only to bite up, I want them to bite across to the right side of the line to open up this seam. So instead of pulling the left guard across here and clogging up this lane, he's pulling the left guard across to the right side, which you watch these linebackers, they won't just bite up, they'll bite across. So as we run this through, you see them bite up and run across, and you can see there is this huge window here that this linebacker actually does quite a nice job of trying to get himself back into it when he realizes it's a play action fake. And this receiver could do a better job getting off this jam. He's probably jammed inside, and that's probably what throws off Stroud. I think there's probably a window. If he just rips that right now, he could probably hit that. But I don't hate the decision to take this away with this guy trying to sink under it. But you could see how the window emerged, and then Stroud resets and pulls that one outside and hits a nice throw there. So
great play.
Yeah, really nice play.
Stroud's incredible.
It's a great example of how Slowik designs. The concept itself was exactly what we saw from Shanahan 5 times a game in 2012 back in Washington. So it's not anything new, but the difference was, rather than running all the outside zone fakes, they ran the gap scheme, the counter fake, which is the gap scheme run that we saw earlier in the game. So he's able to marry up different run concepts with different play action concepts, and he's very aware of the little details like we talked about with the guard pulling one way to open up the throwing lane the other. So that was really impressive for me the first time watching Bobby Slowik through. And then
they'll have to get a fullback, right, Mark? They'll have to add a fullback if Slowik comes to town.
I would think yes. I think that would be not necessarily a priority, but that would certainly be on the to-do list. That they definitely like to incorporate a fullback. The Shanahan tree guys. I would think that also applies to a guy like Ben Johnson. That they use a fullback sometimes, and it's becoming more and more popular to involve a fullback again, especially if that fullback can be kind of a third tight end or a decent receiving option. They can create some mismatches. So that is something they'll probably look to do if Bobby Slowik would be the guy.
I think what I also love about that play, it just shows the attention to detail because, for one, Bobby Slowik has a defensive background. He was a defensive assistant. He kind of grew up in that realm. I actually was reading an article about Kyle Shanahan recently and how prior to becoming an offensive coordinator, he would go in and sit in on defensive meetings and watch what the new defensive trends were and kind of work his way backwards, try to build offenses to kind of go against that. So just kind of seeing that exaggerated, that gap fake to kind of draw the defense in. I wonder, like, Bobby still kind of had that in the back of his mind from being a defensive coordinator, being a defensive assistant, kind of like, hey, I know that, these are some of the tells that I encourage my defenders to do. I'm going to try to flip that on the offense, kind of work it against them. So it's pretty cool to see that. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as we were talking about the big success that Stroud has had in this system has been on play action stuff. And the play action stuff is very much the classic Kyle Shanahan play action stuff. It's a lot of the bootlegs. And in that playoff game against the Browns in the wildcard game that they just tore the Browns apart, it was all play action stuff. And if you watch just about any highlight package of CJ Stroud from this year, you will see a ton of it is play action. And this is a big reason why is you use that run game, you set up these fakes, you get the defense to bite up, you've got so much more space to work with, and when you've got a quarterback with the arm and the accuracy of Stroud, you're going to make use of that space. So this was a little package from that Browns game where you see the variants of play action stuff that they have off of these are just more of those bootlegs that we saw earlier with Kyle Shanahan and with Bobby Slowik. So they're going to fake a wide zone scheme to the left here. Stroud's going to roll out to the right. You've got one tight end pretending to insert to block here, but is actually running this deep corner route. You've got a backside crosser as your intermediate route, and then you've got Brevin Jordan faking a block here and then working out to the flat. And what you'll see here is they'll fake that play action. Stroud will start rolling out. You'll get everyone biting up. This is creating a pretty nice open window over the middle for this intermediate crosser. You got the tight end threatening this guy over here. He's going to grab the safety as well. And then you've got, most importantly, you've got Brevin Jordan. There's a bit of a coverage bust here. Both of these guys are thinking, I'm meant to be beating this block and getting to the backfield. One of them is meant to be peeling off to cover Brevin Jordan, and neither of them do. So Jordan ends up coming wide open. But even if Jordan isn't open, you've got options on this backside here. You've got this backside receiver he can flatten off, and he's going to get a nice gain. You could potentially throw this, but with the safety over the top, you're probably not looking to throw that. You're probably looking more in these areas. But fortunately, you get this little coverage bust. You get the tight end open in the flat, and then Brevin Jordan goes and makes an amazing play, makes the defender miss. And because, again, all the other defenders were out of position because of the fake, and he's gone up the sideline for a huge touchdown. So that was the first one. This one is another variation of a bootleg. You've still got the same core concepts here. You've got the wide zone fake to the left. You're going to have a receiver or a tight end running this deep corner out as the deep option. You're going to have a tight end blocking here, but this time he's actually going to stay into block. And what they're going to do is bring the X receiver, I think it's Nico Collins, they're going to bring him across in what's called a sift. He's going to sift back across the line. As this line's all run faking to the left, he's going to sift back across it, kind of sneak out into the flat. And typically this would be a tight end, but this is one of Shanahan, the Shanahan tree. This is one of their favorite ways to get one of their top receivers the ball quite easily. It's something Kyle Shanahan, when he was with the Falcons, he did this with Julio Jones all the time. And it was just a nice way. You line up your receiver in a tight set, and he kind of almost effectively plays as a tight end. And he leaks across the line here. They also have this little jet sweep fake just to add on top of the misdirection. But you'll see here, Nico Collins will come across. They're all thinking, we've got this run this side, we've all got to run this way. This poor corner's got to try to keep up with Collins leaking out to the flat here. He's never going to do it. There's so much traffic and so much ground for him to make up. You got the fake coming out of it, and Stroud comes out of it. This defender does a nice job of keeping on Stroud, but he's able to throw over the top of him to Nico Collins, and then you've got your ex receiver in the flat with a head of steam ready to run up that sideline, and this is the corner trailing him. And if this defender hadn't peeled off, I think this receiver would. I think Collins would still be running at this point. So he ends up getting up the sideline and then picks up a nice 15-yard gain, and it's a nice play design. It's a nice little variation off the bootlegs. And then this final one,
they do real quick, Mark. They do those shifts all the time.
Yep.
I know there's other words for them, but making that DB travel all the way back through traffic to try to get a guy running full speed is always going to be better for the offense. Also, as we watch these things, I have tight end envy.
Yeah, exactly. And then, Mark, just to kind of pause and recap real quick. So far what we're seeing from Bobby Slowik, gap run scheme. He runs a lot of offensive play calls that kind of mimic each other, kind of deceive what the defense is seeing. Could potentially be a run or a pass. We're seeing a lot of play action from under center, what we're seeing from Bobby Slowik. What are some of the bigger trends that you think from him?
Yeah, it's not necessarily that he's a gap scheme guy over a zone scheme. I'm sure if he had the right personnel, if he has the right personnel, he'd run zone scheme. But he's the nice thing that you're seeing is that he's flexible and he understands that, hey, my personnel here is better with gap scheme, so I'm going to run more gap scheme, and because I'm running more gap scheme, I'm going to then have a knock-on effect of adjusting my play actions to incorporate those gap scheme runs. So that's a real good sign of a real detailed play caller, someone that understands his personnel and adjusts the smaller details of his plays to make the most of them. So so this is the third play action bootleg sort of variation, and we've seen the tight end leak out to the flat. We've seen the X receiver leak out to the flat. This time we're going to have Brevin Jordan, who was initially over here blocking. He's going to come across, and he's going to be the guy sifting across into the flat. You're going to have Nico Collins running this intermediate crosser, and the fake on this one is, or the twist on this one is, the tight end that's been running that deep corner route just to clear out and try to grab the safety. He's going to run what they call a hiccup route, where he's going to make it look like he's running that corner route, and then he's going to hiccup back inside and break it back inside towards the post. And this is a real nice variation, but it's one that you can only run if you have a special kind of quarterback, because as you'll see, Stroud will fake this play action, roll out to his right on the bootleg, and then he's going to pull up and chuck this thing all the way back across the field. Yes, it's going to be wide open, but it takes it's not easy. He makes it look easy, but it's not easy to roll out to your right, pull up, and then just throw a dart back to the left deep down the field. So we'll see this here. You see you've got it looks all the same. You've got the tight end coming out to the flat. You've got this other tight end running what looks like it's going to be that corner. You're going to have that intermediate crosser from Collins. It looks like it's all the same.
All linebackers froze there too, by the way, Mark. If you go back like half a frame, all of them are looking forward, kind of pausing for a second. That was good hesitation.
Yeah, sorry, I can only go back 5 seconds or 10 seconds.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Thing, so no, it's all good. So we'll see. Yeah, they're all taking that step forward. They're not biting so heavily on the run fake as they were earlier, where we saw them coming down to within a yard or two of the line of scrimmage, because they've already been burned by a couple play actions already. But you hit them with another twist here, where you're not trying to hit that play action to the flat, or you're not trying to flood this one side of the field. What you're actually trying to do is get everyone over committing back to this side of the field to open up the hiccup route, which is exactly what you'll see happening. You see this safety's going to drive down on this crosser. These guys are all going to try to sit underneath this crosser. That's going to leave this safety kind of exposed, and he's going to be assuming that hey, this tight end has done this route like 3 or 4 times this game. He's just going to break outside. I'm just going to take it and stay on top of it. And then suddenly you see him start to break there. And again, everyone's looking, okay, this is going to the tight end in the flat. And if worse comes to worse, you can hit that tight end in the flat and pick up a solid gain. But what they're really looking for is this fake here. And so yeah, you get this safety driving down this crosser. This safety is driving down on what he thinks is a corner route. And suddenly he breaks this back off, back across the middle. You got this safety is completely put in a blender. And you've got CJ Stroud pulling up here at about midfield, launching this thing back across his body. And he throws an absolute beauty straight into his hands for a touchdown. So, gorgeous. And this is something.
Mark, I can hear the people already asking. The offense is so beautiful. It's so quarterback friendly. What would Howell look like in an offense like this had he been given the opportunity to do some of this stuff? Your answer to that would be?
He could look all right. I still like we've done breakdowns all season of Sam Howell, and we've shown that there's a lot of positives to Sam Howell's game. Yes, he regressed towards the end of the year, and I think ultimately a new regime's going to come in and look at that second overall pick and think there's a really good chance to draft a real talented quarterback and reset our clock with the quarterback. And I think it's unlikely that they're going to go with Howell, but you never know. Maybe Ben Johnson comes in with that USC connection and UNC connection and thinks, yeah, I can make Sam Howell work and I like what he has. And maybe they don't like any of the quarterbacks. Maybe the only one they like is Caleb Williams, and the Bears take him 1, and they don't think any of the other guys are worthy of 2. And so they think, okay, well, we'll sit with Howell. We'll take an offensive tackle, or we'll take a wide receiver, or we'll trade back, or those are all possibilities. But I think the most likely outcome here is they're going to go quarterback. I
completely agree with you. I guess my question more was, and I know it's just thinking through it, but how much better do you think Howell would have looked like in a system like this compared to what he was asked to do this year?
You would imagine he'd look a lot better. I guess it depends on how much Eric Bieniemy ran the system that he ran, based on what Howell had communicated to him that he likes and doesn't like.
Sure. Okay.
We talked about this system being quarterback under center a lot, and maybe Howell doesn't like being under center. The thing about being under center is the play action fakes. You have to turn your head away from the defense to sell the fake.
Absolutely.
And there are quarterbacks that really don't like that, because you turn your head away from the defense to sell the fake, and then by the time you flip your head back around, it could be a completely different picture from what it was pre-snap. Sure. So that's really hard to diagnose, and some guys don't like that. Now, obviously, ideal world, you're designing an offense that the fake is so good and the schemes are so good that you're kind of turning and throwing to a spot, and not so much turning and then thinking about, okay, where's the safety? Where's my first read? Where's my second read? You're more turning and thinking like in the Shanahan system, when it's run its best, he's turning and basically his back foot's hitting the ground, and he could almost do with his eyes shut. He's ripping that drift route that we talked about to Pierre Garçon for 15 yards across the middle, or I guess Terry McLaurin in this offense, right? So, it's it's hard to say because we don't know what Sam Howell's preferences are, but I'd imagine he would do a lot better in this style of offense, and I think he could handle it. But maybe the reason Bieniemy ran the system he ran this year is because Howell wasn't comfortable being under center and wasn't comfortable with under center play action and stuff like that. We'll probably never know that. So it's hard to define.
One thing real quick, I see Hog Farmer Chris Bryant putting in that film work right now. He says, "What's up, gentlemen?" And then he also said, "We're drafting an offensive lineman in round 1. Book it," is what he said. So I really hope not, Chris. Yeah, we let it go, man. All right, it's all good. He says I have the best beard in the game. I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Doug's number 2, right behind me, though. It's all good. What's up, big Chris? Go ahead, Mark. Sorry to distract you, Mark. Go ahead, dude.
No, all good. So this is that same hiccup play that we just looked at against the Browns. This was it run earlier in the season. The they get to it slightly differently, but it's all essentially the same thing. And again, it's because they have number 7 at quarterback here that they're able to do this. And again, you have this sift out to the flat. You have this intermediate crosser. This receiver's going to look like he's running that corner route, and he's then just going to hiccup back across the middle. And you're going to have Stroud rolling out and pulling up. And I just wanted to show it because it's a nice clip to show, and it shows how nice the offense is. And again, he's pulling up inside his own 10-yard line, and he's throwing back across his body. And this one's not quite as easy because that safety has gained depth, and he stayed real deep there. So he can't just loft this. He has to kind of drive it and lead this receiver more across the field rather than up the field to keep it away from the safety. So this isn't an easy throw, as easy as he makes it look, especially with defenders a few yards away from him and kind of closing in on him. But he still is able to pull up from that bootleg, pull up nice and quick, throw this quite shallow, lead that guy away from the safety, and they pick up a good 40 yards on the play.
Hey, Mark, one thing that's what I'm catching, maybe it's just coincidence over the past couple of plays. Like I would watch Texans games on like Red Zone, or I'll catch highlights in the afternoon because typically I'm watching the Commanders games. It seems like there's that element to explosive plays. Like I've seen that like consistently like on Red Zone and stuff. But like, does this Bobby Slowik have that element in his offense where it seems like he's taking shots pretty often?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Like as I said, any highlight you see of CJ Stroud, a vast majority of the big plays, the explosive plays, are going to come off of these play action stuff. And they will use the play action to attack down the field. It's not just your short to intermediate stuff. They attack down the field, and then they hit those things down the field because you have a quarterback in Stroud that can hit them. So, but yeah, I thought I'd also highlight another little package here. We talked about Slowik being a Shanahan tree guy, and obviously a lot of what we've seen here is very similar to what Kyle Shanahan would do. Another Shanahan tree guy is Mike McDaniel down in Miami, and McDaniel he obviously is a Shanahan tree guy and runs a lot of the same stuff, but he has some different guys at receiver. He has Tyreek Hill, he has Jalen Waddle. He's got a lot of speed there. So he does a few different things to what Kyle Shanahan does. And one of the things that we've seen quite frequently from McDaniel over these few years is they'll run this little play action concept here where they'll have Tyreek Hill, or one of these two is Tyreek Hill, one of the other one's Jalen Waddle. They don't really care who's who. But one of them is going to do this little motion across the field, and then the ball is snapped kind of midway through their motion, and they turn that motion into a wheel route down the sideline. And you'll have the other one kind of running up the seam. And so Bobby Slowik, he doesn't have the same guys that Mike McDaniel does, but he's like, well, that's quite a nice scheme. I quite like that. So I'll borrow it and install it with the Texans. So, he's not just watching Kyle Shanahan's offense every week and going, I'm going to run what Kyle's running. He's watching, he's watching Mike McDaniel. He's watching LaFleur. He's watching Sean McVay, and he's pulling from each of those guys and seeing what's working from them. And so he's installing all the stuff that's working. So again, this is going to be a little zone fake. You're going to have the tight end sifting across and blocking this time. And yeah, you're going to have, I think this is Tank Dell running this wheel route, and you're going to have Nico Collins working up the seam. And I don't know whether this is a play action or RPO. It's hard to say exactly. I think it's probably more play action based on how the offensive line block it, but in theory, it could be an RPO. I think this is the slot corner or safety. And he's kind of blitzing, so CJ Stroud could be reading him and pulling this and hitting this seam route based off of what's happening here, or it could just be a pure play action pass. But either way, he pulls this. It's not the best cut block from the tight end, but he does a nice job of making this throw. Nico Collins gets a little bit jammed by, I think that's Minka Fitzpatrick, or no, he's not 29, he's 39. So he hits this seam route, and they get a nice gain. And so he not only does he borrow from Kyle Shanahan, he borrows from the Shanahan tree. He borrows from Mike McDaniel, and naturally, the Shanahan way of things is you don't just take one play, you build layers off of it. And so we just saw Tank Dell go in motion, run behind Nico Collins up the seam, and run that wheel route. So they're going to fake that exact same run, and then they're going to use this fake to set up this little screen here.
Before you get there, Mark.
Yep.
One of the things that I've learned from these Tuesdays that you pointed out, I think is brilliant. Mike McDaniels, as you were talking about, you've often said he uses that motion to get receivers already moving before they get into their route. Where a lot of the other guys are using the same motion more as a decoy or a way to figure out what defensive set they're in. I'm curious what we're looking at with Slowik. Because I hadn't thought about that until you pointed it out, and you're absolutely right. When I started watching Dolphins down towards the end, it's right. It was getting Tyreek Hill a full head of steam before he ever even gets into his route. But that's not what a lot of the guys in the tree do, right?
Yeah, it's not necessarily what the rest of them are looking to do, but the rest of them don't have a Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle to be doing that with. So, if you have the guy to do it, I'm sure the rest of them would be looking to do it. But yeah, Slowik is mixing in what he thinks can work from the other trees. So if he sees something working, he'll borrow a play, and as I say, he's not just going to borrow one play, he's going to build off of it, because the whole Shanahan system is built off of each play has a package of plays that go with them, that you have like we started with this with, you have the wide zone, you have the bootleg off of it, you have the screen off of that, you have the drop back play action off of that. You've got 4 or 5 plays packaged into every single call. So it all looks the same. It's all really hard to diagnose. So yeah, again, this one is that exact same look that we just saw. You got Tank Dell running that motion to get him full head of steam as he runs the wheel route. You got Nico Collins going up the seam. And again, this is all just to fake this look to set up this little screen. And you see you've got the flat defender here. He's really worried about trying to catch up to Tank Dell, so he's not even looking at this over here. You got these guys trying to get depth, and that sets up the screen. Now, the Texans don't have the best offensive line, so they don't get these guys out in front as nicely as you'd like. So it's not set up perfectly, but they still get a pretty solid gain out of it. So yeah, it shows again that he's not just picking from Kyle, he's picking from Mike McDaniel, he's picking from LaFleur, he's picking from McVay. He's finding things that works, and he's not just going one-off plays, he's building packages around them, which is a real good sign of a guy that gets it from the play calling standpoint.
They've been in real tight in a lot of these clips that you've had, Mark. Is that a trend?
Absolutely. Yeah, the whole point is to try to make everything look similar, try to get everything condensed. When you have the defense all condensed like that, it makes it easier to run those play action things because you have width outside to use, and you can attack the outside. So yeah, absolutely. The idea is to condense everything and try to make everything look very similar, and make it hard for the defense to understand exactly what's going on. And that's when you get the things that, like we saw with the sift across, and you've got some corner out here trying to get all the way out to the flat here, and he's got, because everything's so condensed in the middle of the field, it's hard for that guy to then get all the way across and work through all the bodies in the middle of the field. So yeah, it's definitely deliberate and by design. So the last couple clips I've got here just shows again how Slowik layers his concepts and his play calling. And down here in the red zone, we've got a little inside zone run scheme. You're going to have the tight end. You got a little bunch set to the right here, single receiver isolated to the left, but he's tight to the formation as you just mentioned. And you got the tight end. He's going to sift across here, try to block the edge, and they're going to try to run a little zone scheme. Now this play gets blown up, but the important thing is you see the look that they're going for is this formation, this bunch set, this tight bunch set, and they got this tight end sifting, and then they're trying to run this little inside zone play. So they run the little inside zone, the tight end comes across trying to kick out, they get blown up inside. As I say, these guys aren't the best at running the zone scheme stuff. The Steelers do a nice job of blowing that up. But on the very next play, they come back to the exact same look. You got the exact same bunch set. You got the same split from the receiver. You got the tight end running that same sift. You're faking that same zone. To the defense, that looks exactly the same. The only difference is you've got this receiver now running just a little slant, kind of drifting into the end zone. And because the defense has just seen this zone, they think, oh, you're trying to run the exact same thing. We're all going to bite up real heavy. And what you'll see is, as we run this through, you'll see linebacker, safety, all bite up on the run fake. They're all thinking, okay, I've got to get up to the line of scrimmage, and that leaves the huge open field in the middle of the field, and CJ Stroud pulls the ball and quickly hits Collins over the middle for a touchdown.
Yeah, the strong safety never even looks at the receiver there.
Yeah, right. It's all about tying things together.
Yeah.
And that's their bread and butter too. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if this was the exact same concept. I saw something similar with the 49ers clip way back at the beginning of the video clip. Something like the little that quick slant off the top is very good.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So that is kind of all I have on Slowik. It shows that he gets it as a play caller. Obviously he's been in the Shanahan system for a while, and so it's and the Shanahan system has been very successful around the league. And you always kind of worry that, like, when you're trying to hire a guy from under Kyle Shanahan, it's like, how is he going to do? He's never called plays because Kyle Shanahan calls all the plays. How's he going to do running his own offense? Can he replicate the success? Does he get all the finer details of the Shanahan system? And I think we started it off by looking at, he had all the ingredients and they're all there to replicate what Kyle Shanahan does. But by the end of it, we've seen he really gets it in terms of layering the concepts, building off of, it's not just we're going to run outside zone and we're going to run a bootleg. We're going to run 3 or 4 different variations of bootleg, and we're going to use the bootlegs to attack different levels of the field and isolate different defenders. And it's all going to look the same, but we're going to build different things off of it. And we also have seen the flexibility to adjust to his personnel. So as we've talked about throughout, the Texans offensive line is probably a little bit more suited to gap scheme stuff. So rather than just mastering the zone scheme and trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, Slowik has shown, hey, these guys are better with gap scheme stuff. I'm going to do some gap scheme stuff. But on top of that, I'm going to build my play action attack off of the gap scheme stuff. And then I'm going to use the finer details of, I'm pulling the guard one side to the other to get these linebackers to bite up in a certain direction and open up passing windows that I want. So he really gets it as a play caller. I think if he doesn't get hired this cycle, he's going to go back and have a fantastic year with CJ Stroud next year. And he will be what Ben Johnson is this year, I think, because he gets it as a play caller. And the offense is very much that Kyle Shanahan system that everyone wants. He has his own little twists, but he runs it really well, and he really understands that it's not just about one play here or there. It's about the package and being able to layer things and call things in sequence to set things up. He's done a phenomenal job with the offense, and CJ Stroud has had just a fantastic rookie year, and that wasn't necessarily what everyone was forecasting. And I think they've done such a good job of Slowik and his staff of developing CJ Stroud, and it'll be interesting to see, as we kind of talked about, next year, if Slowik ends up back in Houston, that if he can progress from that and start using some more of the drop back stuff and then the empty stuff that you talked about earlier, Doug. So that'll be interesting, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if someone sees what Slowik is doing and goes, maybe it is a year early, but we're not looking to win next year. We're looking to build, and we can let him learn on the job, as we kind of started this whole thing off by saying. And I think you can see that their potential is there. And certainly a very good system and a good play caller.
I got a couple questions for you. Sorry to interrupt you, Doug, but
Yep.
I guess the questions would be, you seem pretty effusive about Slowik. Would you be happy with him in Washington? Would he be a high priority choice for you as a head coach? I guess that's part one of the question. Part two is you have a pretty unique eye because we've done 2 back-to-back film sessions with Ben Johnson and Slowik. Where do you have a preference between the 2 of those so far?
Yeah, I think Ben Johnson.
We've done three.
And
now.
McDonald too, actually. Yeah.
How would you rank the 3 so far?
Well, the one thing I would say is that obviously we can only go off of the play calling and the stuff they put on film, and being a head coach is far more than that. So the leadership qualities and that kind of thing, you have to caveat with that. If we're just going off of the system and the play calling ability, Ben Johnson is a year ahead of where Bobby Slowik is right now, and Ben Johnson probably has better weapons and a better offensive line and can do more things. But because of that, we've seen him be able to do more things, and therefore I would probably put Ben Johnson at the top of that list. And then Bobby Slowik, as I say, I think Bobby Slowik's just a year behind him. I think he's a really good play caller. He's in that Shanahan system, and he's not just running Carl's offense. He's running his own offense, but he gets why Carl's offense works, and that makes his offense very good. And it'll be interesting to see, if he ends up going back to Houston, how he builds on that next year, because I think he'll take a similar step forward as Ben Johnson did. In terms of ranking them overall with including McDonald, I'd probably have Ben Johnson as my first guy, and then probably McDonald, and then Slowik out of those three. I certainly wouldn't be unhappy with any of them. I'd be very happy with any of them purely from a scheme standpoint. And if I let my bias play into it a little bit, like the Shanahan system is the one that I have learned football in. So I would certainly be very happy if Bobby Slowik came here and ran the Shanahan system. I'd enjoy that very much. But Ben Johnson's system is also very good and quite similar to what the Shanahan system is anyway. So I think I would give it to Ben Johnson just because he's had that extra year. We've seen that it wasn't just a 1 year wonder. We've seen that he's able to build on top of that and add more to the offense and do more different things to attack defenses in different ways. Whereas the Texans offense, as good as it's been, as I kind of have pointed out, it's been very heavy on the play action, very reliant on the play action. And that's good. That works. And obviously it got the Texans through the wildcard round of the playoffs. So that's not bad at all. But it can be tough to play from behind with that kind of style of offense. And whereas we've seen from Ben Johnson and the Lions, they're able to adjust and go a little bit more pass heavy, a little bit more drop back, and some of the empty stuff that you talked about. And so we've just seen a little bit more evidence of what the Ben Johnson system is compared to Bobby Slowik, and that's purely circumstantial. I'm sure Bobby Slowik can do the other stuff as well. It's just we don't have the evidence of it yet.
The other two names that I hear floating around that we haven't gotten to, and maybe we can get to one of them next week, the two are Raheem Morris and Dan Quinn. Both guys, Dan Quinn took the Falcons to the Super Bowl, and with Kyle there with him. And I think the thing that really intrigues people about Raheem Morris is he's coached both sides of the ball also. And again, he's built so many relationships in the league. One of the things we talk about with these head coaches that we try to talk about that I think a lot of people don't is the importance of being also able to build a staff out. I think when you talk about building a staff, Raheem Morris intrigues me more than any of the candidates as far as putting together one of those all-star type deals like we see up in Detroit. I don't know, maybe if we can take a look at Raheem Morris next week, but I'm curious your thoughts early on about him, Mark, and what he is more kind of like, to me, he's more like one of those CEO types as the head coach.
Yeah, I think that would be the way I would see Raheem Morris. And then we can take a look at his scheme next week if you want to. But I think the appeal of Raheem Morris isn't necessarily the scheme.
That's right.
As
that's
good
why
as it is.
I think you're right.
Yeah, the appeal of him is the character that he is, the person that he is, the energy that he brings to a building, the leadership that he brings, and as you say, the connections. Like, he's been around so many different coaches, so many different very good coaches on both sides of the ball. I would think of any of the coaches in this hiring cycle that could hire the best overall staff. You're probably looking at Raheem Morris as the guy that could attract the best.
People forget what he did in Tampa Bay when he was the interim coach there. They won 10 games, I think, something crazy like that.
Yeah, they won a lot of games playing a lot of rookies, and everyone that has met Raheem Morris vouches for him. And
true.
Like all of his former players, like Jalen Ramsey was talking about how on Twitter the other day about how, like, I think who was it? It was the GM of the Rams was saying like
Les Snead
players
was on
might
the
get.
podcast,
Yeah, he was saying players might. There might be some tampering charges because players all want to go play for him, which was a nice comment. And Jalen Ramsey said, well, maybe we wouldn't be tampering, but I think anyone that got a call from him would want to go play for him. So, and he kind of backed that statement up. So, yeah, it speaks to how the league views Raheem Morris. And so I think if you want one of those kind of CEO types, as you say, that almost what Rivera has been the past few years, where he lets his offensive coordinator.
Mark.
He lets his offensive coordinator coach the offense. He lets his defensive coordinator coach the defense. He is the head coach, which is his own separate entity. And he's able to build coaching staffs. And if his staff gets poached, he's able to replenish those coaching staffs. Maybe the more apt comparison would be Harbaugh in Baltimore, where we've seen those coaching staffs recycle different coordinators and different coaches, but consistently be a good winning team. Consistently be a disciplined and tough competitive team, consistently win games, and it all comes from Harbaugh in Baltimore. And I think Raheem Morris could do a very similar thing wherever he ends up as head coach.
George, quickly before we get out of here, I tweeted out earlier, I think it's interesting for an organization where it feels like maybe the leaks have tightened up more than we've ever seen around here. It feels like Adam Peters and Johnson to the Commanders has been like a done deal for a month now. It's kind of odd. It's almost gotten to the point now where it feels like anything other than Ben Johnson would feel weird, but I don't know that it's a done deal yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to peg that. The one thing is, people that we trust, like, we're hearing the John Kimes, the JP Finleys, the Ben Stanleys, there seems to be some sort of confidence in the room regarding to Ben Johnson. So I see where you're coming from with the momentum there, but I don't think anything is a done deal. I think that, I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks recently on their podcast talking about how it's so important to have a steel shut type of organization because the NFL is so close, so that one little competitive advantage can go a long way. So maybe they are kind of keeping that their mouth shut, which I do appreciate. But I agree. I think Ben Johnson is the leading candidate, and if he is, I'll be ecstatic because that'd be the number one GM candidate coming across the whole, this cycle, and the number one coaching candidate coming together.
Where the bell is the ball.
But,
can you imagine?
Yeah, gonna be awesome. Number 2 overall pick. It's a lot to be excited about. I think we'd be really happy with that. So we'll see what happens.
I like one last one before we get out of here, Mark. It has been rumored that if Ben Johnson comes, he'll bring with him the offensive line coach as the offensive coordinator. I think people underestimate how important and how much of a role the offensive line coach usually plays on a football team outside of just coaching the offensive line.
Exactly.
Yeah, often the offensive line coach, even if he doesn't have the title, is often the run game coordinator.
Exactly.
And the way Ben Johnson's offense is, certainly in Detroit under Dan Campbell, with the identity they want to be that run first offense. If Ben Johnson is looking to replicate that, having that offensive line coach that he trusts and knows to teach up some young offensive linemen, hopefully that are brought in, would be a huge get, really. And that would again help. The thing that the Lions do so well is kind of what we talked about with Bobby Slowik, where they marry the run and the pass with the play action, and you see all the different runs and the run fakes are all look the same, and it's really hard for defenses to diagnose. So I'd imagine the offensive line coach has a large part to play in that over in Detroit. So if you're able to steal him away as well as Ben Johnson, I think you're hitting a home run there.
I agree.
All right, boys, very good. I'm excited. We'll see you both again on Tuesday.
Peace out, gentlemen.